What's good, y'all? This is Masta Ace, Brooklyn, New York. EMC is the crew, and you're checking out Who Mag TV, real hip hop.
Who mag? Who mag? Who mag? Who mag?
I went and entered a rap contest at this roller skating rink in Queens, New York. I wound up winning the contest. First prize was 6 hours of studio time with Marley Marl. And I went to his house a year later, recorded my demo. He liked what I did on the record, on the demos. He asked me to be on his album, Marley Marl in Control, Volume 1, which was a compilation album. I wound up being on a classic record called the Symphony, and from that moment, people knew who I was. The Symphony came about really, me being on the record came about totally by chance. The original lineup was Big Daddy Kane, Cool G Rap, Craig G, and MC Shan. And on the day that they went to record that record, which was going to be the last record recorded for Marley Marl in Control, dudes didn't have enough rides. I was driving, so I wound up being one of the rides, taking fellas over to Marley's house. MC Shan decided not to make that trip. He went wherever he went, home or wherever. He didn't want to be on the song. And so I was just in the studio hanging out, watching Craig G, Cool G Rap, and Big Daddy Kane write their verses. It was going to be three men on the song instead of four. When it came time to record, there was hesitation on all of their parts as far as who was going to actually get on the mic and say the first rhyme. Because up to this point, nobody had heard anybody else's verses. And so Marley looked at me and asked if I had some bars that I could spit, on the mic just to kind of warm up the mood, which I did. Went in and I laid a verse down, which was something I just had from memory. I didn't write it there or have it, pre-written. I had it pre-written in my head, and I said that verse, and he decided after hearing the whole thing complete to keep me on the song, and history was made. I'm not a big fan of Symphony Part 2. Just not a fan. I'm not a fan of the beat or the song. So I'm the wrong person to ask. Symphony, the original is the one for me, and Part 2 was just something that just happened. Around 91, almost 92, Warner Brothers, which was the distributor of Chillin, decided that they had too many acts on the roster and they had to trim some of the fat. At that time, there was interest from Delicious Vinyl, a label in LA. And my manager had spoken to them and there was interest. They asked me to be on a song with the Brand New Heavies. They had dropped a rap album that had a bunch of rap artists. Like, they were into soul, kind of soul music, but they did an album to get their name out there, where they all rappers on the record. And I had one of the songs on that record. Once I did that song, it was called Wake Me When I'm Dead. That was the moment where Delicious Vinyl had real interest and talked about getting me signed to getting me off the Coachella label and signed to Delicious Vinyl. And in 1993, I dropped my second album on Delicious Vinyl. Me and the Biz was a song that, it was a beat that I had heard at Marley's house maybe a year before. And when I heard the beat, I immediately was like, "What's that? Let me get that." And he said, "Nah, that's for Biz. That's a beat I made for Biz." And so a year later, Biz's album comes out. That beat's not on there, and I said, "Yo, whatever happened to that beat? What beat?" It was just, he didn't even remember the beat. He went through a whole bunch of tapes until he found the beat. "Yeah, that's the one." And he's like, "Yeah, Biz didn't use it." I said, "Yo, I want that beat." And he said, "All right." I said, "It'd be cool if I could get Biz to be on the song. That would make it even crazier." And so I reached out to Biz. I asked him. He said he was down to do it. I just had to write the rhyme. So I wrote my rhyme. I wrote his rhyme. I recorded my rhymes. And then when I recorded his rhymes, I had to change my voice so that he would know, when he heard the tape, he would know when he rhymed and when I rhymed. So I changed my voice. I recorded the song. I gave him the tape. He heard it. He liked it. But he and Marley were going through a little something at that time. He didn't want to go into Marley's studio to record it. He said, "Well, if you bring the song to my crib," which basically meant me taking the reel from Marley's house, the master, and bringing it to Biz's house to record, then he would do it. Marley didn't agree to that, and so Marley said, yo, I think we should just leave the song how it is. It'd be kind of cool. You're impersonating Biz and, you know, whatever. And so that's how the song came about. People, you know, a lot of people did think when they heard the song that Biz was on the song, because I really wrote the rhyme in his actual style, the way he rhymed. And so that's the history of that record. I mean, I wasn't really a big fan of the whole, you know, Biz puppet in terms of the backlash in the neighborhood. There was a lot of jokes, a lot of ha, he, you know, behind my back and all of that. It was something that I kind of ran away from. I shied away from because, you know, the Me and the Biz was kind of a more lighter, kind of fun record. And the rest, none of my album was like that. That was the only song on the whole album that had any kind of a lighthearted, fun feel to it. And so I didn't like the fact that people thought that that's the kind of artist that I was, because I was a much more serious artist than that. And, you know, Warner Brothers, you know, forced my hand and demanded that that be the single because Biz's name was attached to it. And, you know, so the puppet became part of the joke in the video. But, you know, looking back on it now, after kind of old wounds have been healed and stuff like that, I think it's a cool thing. And I didn't know that the puppet is super famous. He's all over, you know, Ego Trip magazine. They feature the puppet everywhere, and he's on tour and he's doing big things. Shout out to the Biz Puppet. Crooklyn Dodgers came about real simple. I got a call one day from Q-Tip. He said he was doing a record for the Spike Lee movie, and he wanted to know if I was down to rap on it. I said, absolutely. I was definitely down to do it. This was around at the height of the success of Born to Roll, and I had all these new West Coast fans that were loving me, and the East Coast was kind of trying to figure out who I became and who this new Masta Ace is. And it was perfect timing for me to do a song that celebrated my city, the place where I was born and raised, and I was happy to jump on the record with Special Ed and Buckshot and make a classic. Well, the original plan for Crooklyn 2 wasn't to change the lineup. It was supposed to be the same lineup. What happened was Buckshot declined to be on Crooklyn 2. So it was just me and Ed. And so then the question was, well, the question for them was, do we just replace Buckshot? And they were like, nah, that's gonna be kind of corny, so let's just do a whole new lineup. So then they came up with, you know, with Chubb Rock, OC, and J. Rue. And those fellas represented Brooklyn just as well. So it worked out good for everybody. And I still got to be in the video because Premier wound up sampling my voice, so that was kind of cool. Well, Masta Ace Incorporated was a vision of mine right after the Cold Chillin era, moving into the Delicious Vinyl era of my career, second album. I wanted to try to present a project that felt more like a group than me as a solo artist. At that time, groups were really the most popular. They were selling the most records. You know, you had Cypress Hill, you had House of Pain, you had Funk Dubious, you had, I mean, it was just a laundry list of groups that were out, Public Enemy. Everybody was a group. And so there were very few soloists. So I figured if I could kind of create a group feel where there were other voices on the records, other characters that people could focus in on and look at and say, oh, I like him better than him, or whatever it is. I thought it might give the project a little bit more appeal to the fans, and so that's why I formed Masta Ace Incorporated. And I had my man Unique, my man Ice, and myself, and then we had Paula Perry, who was a female part of the group. Lord Digger kind of got down a little bit later after when we did the Saturday Night Live record, then he kind of became a part of it later, but it was originally Ice, Unique, and Paula. Well, I put out 2 records with Delicious Vinyl. The first one being Slaughterhouse, 93. Second one being Sittin' on Chrome, 95. And at that time, I felt like with the Sittin' on Chrome album, I had given them exactly what they asked for. They asked me for a record that celebrated the car culture, because I had this one record, Born to Roll, that was really successful and really popular, and they wanted me to follow the popularity of that record up with an album that kind of spoke to that audience. And so I created this Sittin' on Chrome album. I produced the majority of the record, and they, in my opinion, didn't fulfill their end of the bargain. They were supposed to take the record that I gave them the record they asked for. They were supposed to take it and make it platinum, and they had so much turmoil internally within the company. They kept changing distributors. I think they changed distributors 3 times, and so the record never really got to the masses the way it was supposed to. And I was at a point where I didn't really want to record with them anymore. And then suddenly there was this interest from Big Beat, which is an Atlantic label, in me moving over there. My manager was talking to them about me moving over there. I needed to get back to, you know, my East Coast roots, if you will. And that's how that happened. I wound up signing the Big Beat, leaving Delicious Vinyl and signing the Big Beat. It wasn't an immediate jump. When I left Chillin and went to Delicious, I did the Slaughterhouse album, which was really my way of I guess balancing out the Me and the Biz record. I was still bothered by the feedback that I got from the Me and the Biz record. People thinking I was this fun kind of gimmicky artist that impersonated rappers, almost like some Weird Al Yankovic stuff. And so I went in the studio and I made Slaughterhouse, which was the darkest, hardest record in my career. And that was what it was. There wasn't no radio records on there. It wasn't nothing you was gonna hear in regular rotation. It was just a dark record that wound up garnering this cult following of fans who to this day still talk about that particular album. But then in '95, when Coach Chillin asked me to do this car culture record, you know, I went in the studio with a more deliberate, focus and giving them the record that they asked for. And I created this sound, which I call Brooklyn bass music, which was really just a lot of heavy 808s and low end, but still rhyming in my style. The beats just were a little bit more walking the line, because the Chronic had come out at that point, '92. The Chronic was out, so I was kind of walking that line of trying to sound a little crispier, because Slaughterhouse was so dark and it was just gritty. So I went and tried to do a record that was crispier, because that's what the Chronic sounded like, and the goal was to make records that sounded like they could be played on the radio. So the result of that was songs like INC Ride, songs like Sittin' on Chrome, songs like Born to Roll, and that's how that transformation came about. Yeah, see, Louie Vega, the version of INC Ride that Louie Vega did, which wound up being called the remix of INC Ride, was the actual original version of INC Ride, which is such a dope piece of music. Like, the original version was dope by itself. It didn't need. I went in the studio to do a remix, the same way I remixed Jeep Ass, and that became Born to Roll. I went in and remixed INC Ride, and when Delicious Vinyl heard my version, they decided that needed to be the original version, and Louie Vega's needed to be the remix. I mean, from a radio standpoint, maybe that was the right decision, you know, because that record, that was officially my most played song that I've ever released. In terms of radio spins, it got the most spins of all my whole career. But I still think that Fat Cat Louie Vega version that was it for me. I still listen to that. That joint is a banger. The J Dilla Sittin' on Chrome remix was not my doing. Mike Ross, who was the president, I believe, him and his brother they owned Delicious Vinyl Records, and I believe Mike, who was somewhat of a producer himself, he would go in and do these little remixes and stuff. He had a relationship with Dilla, and I believe he's the one who gave Dilla the permission to go in and do this remix, this cool remix. And the remix they didn't really do anything with it. Like, it came out, it wasn't even on anything, I don't think. I'm not sure I don't think they knew what they were gonna do with it, but you know, if you can find it, it's floating around out there, the J Dilla remix of Sittin' on Chrome. It's a dope beat. Dilla was at the time, like I said, he was working with Pharcyde, so he was always around, and he mentioned, you know, to the people at Delicious of wanting to work with me. Of course, he wasn't who we know him to be now. He was an up and comer trying to get his name out there. He was doing some dope stuff for Farside. He had done a few things, I guess, with Tip and Tribe and stuff like that. But you know, we were all peers and stuff. So you know, he's a guy who it's a shame people only realize his greatness after he's passed on, and they go back and look at the catalog of what he's done, and their minds are blown. But I put myself in that category too, because at the time he was saying, you know, telling Delicious like he wanted to work with me and do something with me. You know, I was like, yeah, no doubt. One day we'll do something. You know, it's kind of generic response, but thinking back on it now, I wish I had you know, taken him up on that. We could have probably done some great things. Good Old Love, yeah, off Long Hot Summer. Produced by Ninth Wonder, the great Ninth Wonder, super talent. You know, he was the third member and producer of Little Brother. That's how I originally knew him. And at the time that we did Good Old Love, he was still a member of Little Brother, but he was starting to try to spread his wings and produce for outside artists. And I was actually the first artist that he worked with on a record that actually, you know, came out commercially. And my timing was impeccable, because a year after we did the record, he was in the studio with Destiny's Child, Jay-Z, doing great music. And I think if I had discovered him after that, I probably wouldn't have been able to afford him. So big up to my man Ninth Wonder. Thanks for the opportunity. And it's still the song that I close most of my shows with. The Fallen Season is the newest record. It came out in May 2016. It tells the story of me as a young kid, going to high school for the first time, coming from Brownsville, Brooklyn, which is a rough section of Brooklyn, New York, and you know, taking a bus all the way out to a white neighborhood, to a school that was predominantly white, and at a time in the '80s where getting robbed on the avenue was a normal thing, and you know, you had to watch how you walked and what you wore and how you dressed. All of those things could be a danger and a detriment. At the same time, going to the school that I went to and the neighborhood that I went to, being black was a detriment. If you weren't careful and if you didn't walk right, you could have issues on the streets with, you know, certain groups around the school. So I try to tell that story from the perspective of me at 13, 14 years old, and talk about that time in my life and what was going on at that time in my life. And the album's called The Fallen Season because I feel like at that age, around 13, 14, is the age where you are presented with certain decisions that you have to make, and if you make the wrong decisions, you may fall for the rest of your life, be a different person. I think back to some of my friends who I hung with every day, who made different decisions than I made, and a lot of them have been in and out of jail, some just getting out of jail from 30 years ago. So it's just one of those things where I wanted to put a record together because I knew that I wasn't the only one who had this story, and I wanted to share a piece of my history, my childhood with the listeners.